This episode is sponsored by our friends at BVI Yacht Sales in Tortola. With decades of experience, BVI Yacht Sales is dedicated to guiding you through every step of buying or selling your yacht in the Caribbean, ensuring top-notch service. I first met Managing Director Brian Duff way back in the day in Annapolis. Brian is himself an accomplished sailor and actually owned the rig shop where I worked for a time in the mid-2000s. Brian and his team can help list your boat for sale or help you find your dream boat, whether or not they're actually listing it. And don't let the name fool you. They've got an office in Annapolis too. We joke about broker BS on the podcast, but you can trust our friends at BVI Yacht Sales. Check out their listings and get in touch at bviyachtsales.com, just like it sounds, and tell them 59 North sent you. That's bviyachtsales.com.
Ahoy, shipmates. You're listening to the Quarterdeck Sailing Podcast, and I am your host, August Sandberg. Alone this week, I really wanted to have Adam along with me, Adam Brown, our wonderful bosun, as I'm going to talk about winter projects on ISBJØRN today. Adam was recently here, and we worked on ISBJØRN together, and I wanted us to record this podcast face-to-face when he was here. Sadly, we ran out of time, and now you're getting just me all by myself. So hope you find this interesting. Please enjoy this episode. Come onto the Quarterdeck to tell me about your own winter project. That's at quarterdeck.59-north.com. And as always, hold fast. So ISBJØRN spends her winters in the Bergen area on the west coast of Norway. She usually sails until October, and then she's off until the beginning of April. And that is partly because the winters up here are rough and cold and wet, and also very, very dark. Like in the middle of winter, you barely have daylight here. So the sailing isn't that appealing to most people, although we have run winter trips on ISBJØRN. We did a North Sea crossing in January one year, and we've done other trips as well, and they're fun, type 2 fun, but it's really great, and some people really love that stuff, and they want to learn how to sail in extreme environments, and so that's something that those trips can give you. But it's also nice to give the boat a little bit of downtime, and gives us an opportunity to get to work on some projects and do maintenance at a healthy pace. So that's also partly why we do it. So I'm going to go through some of the projects and some of the things that we did this winter, and some general decommissioning, winterizing tips. So the really biggest thing that we had to deal with, I think, this winter was on the second to last trip on the 2020 high season. The vang on ISBJÖRN fell off the boom. So the where the vang is connected to the boom, there's a tang that sticks out the bottom of the boom, which the vang attaches to, and that just broke off, and so the vang just hit the deck. And what had happened was, like, the boom is hollow, and there is a slit, a hole in the bottom of the boom, and then this tang sticks out through that hole, and then is connected to a backing plate inside the boom that is then bolted to the boom. And so this tang had just broken off the backing plate. It's years and years of repeated stresses and metal fatigue just caused that one to give up. There was no traumatic jibe or anything that caused this. It would just fell off after many years of service. So that was something a little creepy that happened. That it was, of course, in a spot that was very difficult to inspect, right? So yeah, definitely a little bit of an eye opener there. But yeah, so what we did was Adam and I at the end of last season, we pulled that backing plate out the back of the boom. So we had to get a batten and kind of push it through the boom, and we managed to pull it out the back. And then we had two pieces. We had the backing plate and we had the tang. and we gave that to a metal shop who then made a new piece for us over the winter. And then now this spring, Adam and I just wanted to get that one back in place. And the piece was beautifully made. It was a perfect copy of the former one. And, we put the mousing line through. They're going to pull it back inside the boom, and everything was going so smoothly. And I even told Adam, like, this is going too well. There's something wrong here. Something's gonna go south. And sure enough, once we had, I had even tied the mousing line to the piece that we were going to pull through the boom, until I realized that, hang on, this is just not going to fit, because it was easy to pull the backing plate out through the hollow boom because the tang wasn't attached at that time. The tang had broken off. Now we had the backing plate and the tang, and the whole thing had to go into the boom, and there was just no space for it. So what we had to do was to remove the end piece of the boom to gain access to the pipe. There is a little assembly at the end of the boom which holds the pulleys for the reefing lines, the outhaul and stuff, and so we had to remove that. And thankfully that piece is removable, or was removable 10 years ago. It was bolted to there with the boom is aluminum, and the bolts were of course stainless steel, Phillips head stainless steel bolts into the aluminum, and those had seized up really hard as they do. So we tried everything. We tried heat, we tried blaster, spray, hammer and chisel, and everything, and then we borrowed my friend Vega's impact driver. Thanks again, Vega. And so that got some of them, and then we had to drill out some of them, which was just completely seized up. But that was fine, and then we replaced them with slightly bigger metric Torx head versions when we put it back on. So next time, that's not going to be that hard. And also, when that was off, we could fit the thing into the boom, no problem. It fit through the slot perfectly, and we could fit the vang onto it, no problem. So that was all good. I said that this happened on the second to last trip of the 2025 season. What I did as a quick fix to solve this before we could have this whole piece kind of fabricated and fixed up was that I made a new one out of essentially a downhaul for the boom with some spliced Dyneema loops, and that worked beautifully. It was great, and there is a video under Seamanship Scenarios on the quarterdeck where I show that whole thing, how I did that. And I mean, that would have worked beautifully. The only thing that didn't do, which our vang usually does, is the upwards support. Right, we have a solid vang with a spring with has not only can it pull the boom down, it can also push it up. So now with that Dyneema workaround, I had to use a topping lift to keep the boom from hitting the spray hood, essentially. But that was fine. But it's very nice to have the vang back in action as it's supposed to be. So that was very nice. Another thing that happened at the end of the 2025 season on ISBJÖRN was that both of the Dorade boxes broke. In two separate accidents, we had lines, sheets that got tangled up in the Dorades and destroyed them. So the Dorade boxes are essentially these, or were, I should say, these teak boxes on the foredeck by the mast. Teak boxes with cowl vents on the top. And they take in air, they filter out spray and rain through the box design so you can ventilate your boat. But these cowl vents, they look kind of like little mushrooms in profile, and they're excellent at catching lines. And so what happened was that there were, jibes, tacks with plenty of lines getting slackened and then tightened and just bouncing around the deck there. And these lines, they snagged the cowl vents and then pulled suddenly, right? The sail suddenly catches the wind and then doing, they go tight. It catches the wind and then pulled the raid boxes. And in one case, it only tore the cowl vent off, so the metal vent at the top, and the raid box itself was safe. The other time, the whole raid box was like ripped out of the deck and just tossed over the side. Very unfortunate, but at least we had one of the raid boxes that we could use as a template to make new ones. And I had some very skilled people at Dolvik, boat builders here on the west coast of Norway, who made us new ones. And I shopped around for prices just to see, like, how can we, how can we do this as affordable and as well as possible? And the answer that I got was that it's going to be more or less the same price, whether you get them in the wooden ones or fiberglass or anything, because like making the mold based on that old template is going to be the most labor intensive part of it. So we went with laminated mahogany for these new ones. They look very nice. They're bulletproof. And then I got the same cowl vents as we had before. Now they're still as prone to catching lines as they were before. You do have some kind of more modern looking designs. They're more rounded. That doesn't flare out quite as much, which might be more sensible. But what I chose to go for was cowl vents with lids. So what you can do is you can just unscrew the whole cowl vent and take it below, and then you get a little lid that fits into that same spot, so you can just remove the cowl vents when you're out sailing, and that removes the whole problem, and there's nothing to snag the lines. Gets very nice and clean up on deck, and then when you're at the anchorage or in harbor, you can put them back up and be nice and ventilated. So that is what I went for there. Quite happy with that. Excited to see how that works out. And that was, I guess those two things were the biggest issues that we had on ISBJØRN 2025. I think, except for the alternator story, which is too long for this podcast, but I'll tell that story sometime on the quarterdeck. I've shared parts of it before, but yeah, this was kind of the winter projects that I was going to talk about today. So what we also do on ISBJØRN is that we cover her with a winter cover, which is a great big raincoat that we put up on her. It's a great thing to have to protect her from, it snows, it freezes, it rains. You got all sorts of crazy weather here during the winter, and it's not great for a boat to have like repeated thawing and freezing to exposed deck hardware, especially if you have teak decks, any wood on deck on your boat. The water is going to kind of seep into the wood. It's going to freeze. It'll expand and it'll thaw again. It'll freeze, and that's just not great. So you want to keep it dry and above freezing if you can. And so that winter cover definitely does that. Also really good for just doing projects on the boat, like when you remove deck hardware, work on winches, replace hatches, stuff like that. You can do that anytime. You're not dependent on a good weather situation to get that work done. So it's very, very practical. So we put that up, and then of course we did our engine service, where we just go through, replace all of the impellers, the strainers, the gaskets and filters, and all that stuff. Change the oil, change the coolant. A few additional projects that we did this year, that we also removed the exhaust elbow and cleaned that. That hasn't been done for a good while, and I was a little worried that there was going to be buildup in there. The exhaust elbow is essentially where the gas exhaust comes out of the engine and mixes with the cooling, raw water cooling. So we suck in salt water, and that's cooling the engine, and then that mixes with the exhaust, and we have wet exhaust out the back, and that's kind of what the exhaust elbow does. And because we have a Beta 60 on ISBJÖRN, that's the engine we have, and to make that fit into the engine bay of ISBJÖRN, we had to have we made a custom exhaust elbow. That is because the old one, the original one, the kind of basic for the Beta 60, sticks out quite far back, like a big loop. We couldn't fit that into ISBJÖRN, so we had a new one made, which is a very sharp bend. So I thought, maybe there's just going to be some carbon buildup in there, and so we took that off and cleaned it out, and I was actually very surprised at how nice and clean it was. So no big deal. And that hadn't been done for a few years. So that was really good. In general, the engine looked fantastic. Like the impeller looked brand new. The oil sure was black. That's fine. But the heat exchanger was very nice. And it was a pleasant job, sure. Also, I did a service of the raw water strainer for the engine. We have a Grocco AGR bronze strainer for the engine, which is gonna outlast all of us. It's just super solid, but the screws that held the kind of basin in place were getting corroded, and so I took that off and put new screws in and new gaskets and all that, and that was looks very beautiful and nice now. We replaced the coolant, as I said, and everything looked really nice. Also, the new alternator that I alluded to also was doing very well, so that's great. Also, we have a Sea Frost fridge compressor on ISBJÖRN that powers a top loader fridge. And that compressor works in air cooling mode and in raw water cooling mode. And we hadn't really used the raw water cooling mode much. We just used the air cooling function because sometimes if you're sailing really hard on poor tack upwind, that intake for the raw water cooling pump, that goes above the waterline and sucks in air and causes it to stop and make a horrible noise. So we generally use it in air cooling mode, but it is much more power efficient in the raw water cooling mode, especially up here in the high latitudes where the water is really cold. So we wanted to bring that functionality back. So now we put in a new water pump in there and generally use it in the raw water cooling mode now. So that is very good. We also cleaned the radiator on the Sea Frost, which is important to do. That sucks up quite a bit of dust in the air cooling mode. So that should also have its cooling efficiency improved. We have a water maker in ISBJÖRN, and we always pickle that before she goes to sleep under her winter covers. We haven't unpickled it yet, even though the season has begun. But the first couple of trips are coastal trips along the Norwegian coast, and the boat will have access to fresh water almost everywhere she goes. And it is a little bit of a pain to have a water maker in service on your boat, because once they are commissioned, they require constant attention. You can't just leave the boat for a week unattended. With some exceptions, if you have a special kind of water treatment solution in place, but they kind of need to work constantly, not to clog up and get really gross. So We haven't unpickled that one. We won't do that until she heads out for a proper offshore passage in a little bit. Another project that we were looking into and are still looking into on ISBJÖRN is that we had some halyard chafe at the very top of the Genoa halyard where the head sail is attached. We had some weird chafing right around the area where the separator is, or the deflector, where there's a little block up there, a little pulley where the Genoa goes through before it goes into the masthead pulleys. And this started happening just after we replaced ISBJÖRN's sails. She got all new sails last season, sort of in the middle of the season. And ever since we got these new sails, this chafing problem popped up. And I thought first that it was because the luff of the sails were a little longer than the former sails that we had, which was unintentional. We didn't really want that to happen. That was a mistake made by the sailmaker. But so we had to work around that a little bit. We had to instead of using shackles, we lashed the tack and the head as well. We had a beautiful Talaska kind of pistol shackle that you can open by clicking your finger on this trigger. We had to cut that away because it was too long. Because the head of the sail came so much higher up. And my thought was maybe because the head of the sail gets too close up to the masthead that this chafing thing starts happening. But I couldn't quite figure out why that was, or by what mechanism that happened. And so after a while, I think my hypothesis changed to the fact that we also changed the diameter of the halyard when we got that new sail. Turns out that the old halyard, with the old sail that we never had any problems with, was 14 millimeter, and then the new halyard with the new sail was 12. And so what we did now, Adam got me a brand new 14 millimeter halyard, and we put that up instead. And the reason I think that might have been the issue was because the clutch on the mast seemed to slip a little bit. We marked the halyard and we clutched it up and saw if there was any movement, and it did in fact slip. And then, if you have a little bit of slack in the line and up the masthead and around the pulleys and stuff, then you can easily develop some chafe. So that is the current leading theory on this chafe issue. So I'm having Nacho skippering the boat right now. He's keeping an eye on that, and so far it's looking good. So fingers crossed that we fixed that issue. We also did some work on the hatches. Adam replaced the arms and the handles on the salon hatch. And we also made a new latching system for the forward hatch. ISBJÖRN has a huge forward hatch in the forepeak up on the foredeck. Great for putting sails up and down and all sorts of stuff, and nice, beautiful skylight from below. But it's also an emergency exit, and it's in the wettest place on the boat. So it's both super important that it gets very, very battened down and leak proof, and it's also important that it can be opened really quickly. So Adam and I came up with this really nice double tether system where you can kind of grab these little tethers and pull it closed and then push them right through to cams on each side to hold those little lanyards in place. So I'm excited about that. I think that's going to work really well. So that was fun. We also had new guardrails made over the winter. We noticed one of the little cordals in one of the old guardrails was coming loose. So we replaced all four of them. They're stainless steel wire, all of them. So like for like. And that is all good. And we also fixed up one of the stanchions that had been bent a little bit, and that was the quick and easy aluminum stanchions that probably maybe had pulled for a fender or something. Also, before we put the boat away, we spray all of this deck hardware very well with fresh water, and so we make sure there's no salt sitting anywhere over the winter, causing corrosion and problems like that. So we did that. Looks very nice. Another advantage of the northern climate is that you have like the cold temperatures and frequent squalls. Makes it's very good for corrosion of deck hardware. Like lots of fresh water and cold, and that's what you want. So very good. We also did service on the windlass up front, and Adam said last year he thought that he was doing the service, and he thought that I had already done it when he went to do it because it looked so nice. Like the grease looked brand new, everything looked really nice, and so and he had the same thought this year. So that one is also holding up extremely well up there, so that was very good. And another thing we always do before we put the boat away is that we remove the log. So the little impeller sensor that goes through the hull and spins around when you move through the water, thereby registering your speed and distance. You don't want to have that sitting in there when you leave your boat for a while because it's just gonna fill up with growths and crap. So just pull that out through the hole and plug the hole. Usually best to do when you're in slings or on the hard, but Adam, he is quick and experienced, so he can do that while the boat is in the water. And of course, you're going to have a little bit of a fountain inside your boat as the hole is well below the water line. But if you're quick, that is a fine way of doing it. So that's good. We also did a leak test. We just went around the boat everywhere and sprayed it with a hose from every possible direction to see if we could find any leaks. We found nothing, so that was good. We got new bins, new trash cans, new chart bags, and we got new wheel leather for the boat. That was very exciting. The old wheel leather was moose leather that was put on the wheel in 2018 when the boat was on during her refit at Vindö Marine in Sweden. So that's held up, for 8 years. That's very impressive. But it was starting to come off a little bit, and we had to redo the stitches quite a few times, and now the parts of the leather was like coming off. So we got that replaced. David did an excellent job stitching on the new one, and it looks fantastic now. So that was really nice. One winter project that was on our list, but that we ended up not doing, was we wanted to put a pod in the cockpit with a Garmin MFD inside. Because it's, we've been using iPads for navigating on ISBJÖRN, and that's been great. But when you sail in coastal Arctic areas, there's just so many skerries and so many rocks and so much stuff that you need to have a digital chart up at all times. And also when it's wet and it's cold, the iPads just do not do well in those climates. And so we figured, we're going to need to have a proper chart plotter in the cockpit if we're going to do this. But then sort of midway through last year, we got an Orca display, which is a marinized tablet. So it does everything the iPad does, but it's like it works. The touchscreen works. If it's wet, if it's cold, it can charge by induction outside. It is just made for boating. And that has been so great that we have deferred that whole chart plotter installation. I still have the pod. It's in my office. We're just kind of going to see how the Orca does for the full season now, and then see what we're going to do. But so far, the Orca is just doing so well that we're probably just going to keep using that for our electronic navigation in the cockpit. We also installed a brand new VHF radio on the boat. We had an ICOM radio, which worked great, but the external handset that we had in the cockpit failed, and we couldn't really get a new one we would have to get a used kind of failed unit, and it all was getting quite old. So instead, we got a Garmin 215 radio with then connected a wired external handset that we could have in the cockpit right by the wheel at the back, and that is going to be really well. So we can use that for to control the radio inside, and we can use the big radio with the antenna at the masthead from the cockpit, just like we used to do. So that is also a very nice upgrade. That's really all I can think of for now. Huge thanks to Adam for his amazing work and his ingenuity. I wish he was here on the podcast with me to talk about these things, but yeah, Adam is a fantastic man, and I'm looking forward to the next boat project we're gonna do together. All right, hop onto the quarterdeck and tell me all about your winter projects and what you're fighting against. And until next time, hold fast. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks again to BVI Yacht Sales for sponsoring the show. Find them at bviyachtSales.com. If you want to join the quarterdeck, go to quarterdeck.59-north.com. The Quarterdeck podcast is produced by August Sandberg for 59 North. Music is by the Storm Weather Shanty Choir.